Welcome to Ask Cadence, everybody. My name is Pete Wright. I'm sitting around the table with Scott Lissit. Hello, Scott.
Hi, Pete.
Good to see you again.
Same here.
And John Patton. John, hello.
Good to be back, Pete.
You know, we started a conversation now many weeks back, it seems like, about the idea of implementing a methodology, a project management methodology in an organization. And I think we did a full 4 episodes on dealing with what is a methodology, what are the minimum standards of a methodology. And today, John, I think you had brought to the table, you wanted to talk about this concept of levels of practice and the PMO.
Yeah.
What sort of standard practices do organizations have? How do they develop these standard practices and provide some guidelines on establishing project management governance?
Okay, Pete. Let me introduce some professional terms, and then I'll use substitute terms to use with an organization that has a low level of practice. One of the key terms in our profession nowadays is this term called governance, and it addresses the structure, loose or tight, around the use of a project management methodology. It answers the question that some organizations ask. We went out, we got training for everybody, why hasn't it stuck? And in many of those cases, there has been no governance. So I'll define governance in our talk here. And then you use the term PMO. Well, what does PMO? People who go to PMI meetings talk about the PMO. PMI is the Project Management Institute, the organization that establishes standards for PMI, highly influential.
Well, why don't we define PMO?
Well, that's
what
next.
do the words mean?
The words can mean, you'll hear 2 things, Scott.
Yeah.
One is Program Management Office, and the more generic term is Project Management Office. Now, as soon as you say Project Management Office, it implies an organizational unit. And right out of the box, many organizations with low levels of maturity is the word in our profession, but I don't like to use it because it suggests maturity and immaturity. We don't want to insult people. So with low levels of practice, let's use the term practice, will reject an additional organizational unit because they don't understand the use. So in establishing governance, we have to have somebody responsible for the standardization and documentation of the practices that we will use. We recommend that in organizations that have low levels of practice, that we establish a steering committee consisting of people at director level and above. And we're going to ask initially about 25% of their time to establish governance, and then on an ongoing basis, we're going to ask that they meet about 2 hours a month to take on governance issues. They focus in the beginning very much on training, getting the organization trained, but also on certification a little later on as they become more advanced, on improvement of those standards, process evaluation, making sure the executives and all higher level management in the company understand and buy into project management. And that's at this level of PMO, that is virtual PMO. How do you handle process improvement? For those companies, rather than do audits, those are kind of scary. We typically have semi-annual or annual conversations with the steering committee and say, well, we walked around the organization here, and these are the things we see in practice. Good job. And after listening to you this morning, what we recommend as the next 2 things you ought to implement and go for the following items, and then let them mount a project to do those, and assuming they buy into that. Now, from the virtual project management office, a little later, the project management office can be one of the directors with a couple of administrative assistants. This director still leads the steering committee, but now they focus on support. So assistance in project plans, project control, an assistant to the project manager on the largest, most important projects. And then sort of a frequently asked questions center or problem handling center for project managers who want advice on problems they're running into. Now, there are about 4 levels of PMO here, Pete and Scott. The third one is what we call the matrix PMO, where all of the project managers in the organization have a dotted line relationship with the director of the PMO. So the director will have regular meetings with these project managers as a group. The director will be responsible for holding a full project portfolio review, where we get about a 5 to 10 minute review of each of the projects active in the portfolio. They also handle entry and processing of new portfolio items. And then finally, that can progress if the organization wants it to what we call the complete PMO, where it also contains project managers who work on only the most significant projects for the company. And so we keep the matrix organization assisting project managers for the smaller departmental projects in different organizations. But now there is a career path for those project managers. And as the organization increases its practice, the human resources organization will be involved in establishing that career path. So that the final PMO, it's a little different from that sort of bare bones virtual PMO in the beginning. We see things like performance management service there, benefit mapping, project metrics, impact management for risk management, help on communications, process improvement, integration, resource and financial services, and then education and training. Those are the elements of a really full-blown project management office function.
Now, one would think that every organization would want to improve their level of practice. And what I've seen is that that's not always true. Some organizations seem to have more interest than others in improving their project management level of practice. And which of these 4 types of PMO an organization decides to implement should be dependent on many different factors within the organization, some of which are what's the size of the organization, how many employees are there, how many projects are being worked on at any given time. Is it just a handful, or is it several dozen, 30, 40, 50, 100 projects? How significantly have projects been falling short, just by a little bit or by a lot? And what's the change culture? What is the attitude towards doing things very differently in just one step, or is a more gradual change approach needed?
If we were to look at a traditional view prior to some recent products, was to look at total practices available in project management and best practices and break them up into about 5 levels. And we've seen the virtual project office work well up into level 3, through level 3. And many companies are just very happy, as you say, Scott, to get there. Significant competitive advantage comes from project management in levels 4 and 5. And invariably, in that kind of setting, I see either some kind of business unit function or a person specifically with responsibility of project management or a divisional function. And that's where we start seeing matrix and complete project management offices.
But what our assertion is here is, check me on this, is that even adopting the willingness to invest in the project management office infrastructure, just starting to the virtual and with an understanding that you have a place to go, is a key strategic advantage for getting the work done.
It's just essential, Pete. If a company's going to invest money in training, we ask them to invest 4 hours initially and sensitizing the executives and higher levels of management to governance. And the fact that they have a very important role, and if they don't accept the role or if they don't understand it, then there's a high risk of this training going to waste.
Well, that's just such an important point, John, because I've seen examples of organizations where the rank and file know that they need to do projects better, and they may go out and seek training, maybe at the manager or the director level, but if there's no support at the highest levels of the company for significantly improving the level of practice of the organization, then it's going to be very difficult then to see the kind of progress, the kind of improvement that you're talking about here with these 4 kinds of PMOs.
Briefly, can you give us an example of why an executive sort of rank would not support, this sort of initiative, if the rank and file is particularly talking about?
Believe it or not, some senior executives don't understand the benefit of project management. They don't understand how it can impact the bottom line or how it can affect ongoing operations. And so for them, they see project management training or a PMO as an expense. They see it as a drain on the organization, not as something that can have a return on investment that will actually improve the company's competitive stance and its ability to compete in the marketplace.
Yes, Scott, we're in a recession now, and we're seeing project managers get laid off, like in every recession. One, because the list of projects has been shortened due to the lack of money available, but number 2, because executives have never really seen the value of dedicated project managers. And there's that fear always of what's called formal project management, seen as bureaucracy by fast-moving, entrepreneurial, creative executives. And in fact, if any of our listeners want to do a Google search on the terms formal project management, the responses are all from people and companies selling solutions on how to avoid formal project management. And that includes us. It's
Sure.
about matching the need to the practice level of the organization and taking them through improvement and always justifying it against the improvement in the business bottom line.
So note to self, promote more project managers to C-level executive positions, because they apparently get it. Thank you, gents, for your time today. On behalf of Scott Lissit and John Patton, I am Pete Wright. Join us again next week for another Ask Cadence.